Welcome back to the K Craftsman YouTube channel. Welcome if it's your first time. Today we're building this bench that you just saw. And before we jump into the build aspect of this, I just want to explain this project. And it's taken me 6 months to complete. Now, it hasn't been that difficult that it's taken me 6 months to figure out. It's just been, I started it, then basically put it to the side, had a bunch of life stuff happen, had other paying projects to finish up, and now I've finally been able to finish it, and I'm super happy with the way it turned out. I just want to let you know that part 1 is in the past, and then I will bring you up to speed in the shop of when we get to the future. So let's get to building. Alright, so here's pretty much the joint, what it's going to look like. So that'll be the leg benched up here, and then there will be another joint up here which meets the armrest. Bench top will be flowing around here. So I'm going to just glue this end grain to end grain like this, let it dry. Then I'm going to add some 2 splines into the miter joint here to strengthen it up and also add a decorative feature to it. I'm going to finish milling up the leg pieces, cutting them all. The way the armrest and leg pieces will be joined to the bench, there will be a tenon on here and a mortise on the bench. I'll cut the 2 long leg pieces, the miter on one end, a tenon on the other end. Then we'll go ahead and clamp up the 2 pieces together, gluing on the end grain. Then I'll put the splines in, and then after that, and we flatten the top and everything, I'll mark out the mortises. We'll cut those out, slide everything together, and hopefully it will go together smoothly. Fingers crossed. Something always usually comes up, but it seems pretty straightforward. So yeah, we'll continue on with cutting out the leg and armrest pieces. Alright, so we got all the pieces cut to length, the miters on the ends that we need them. Now I will mark out the tenon on each of the armrest piece and the longer leg pieces, and we'll cut the tenons out, and then these will be ready for assembly. Alright, so we got all the mortises. We got all the tenons cut for the armrest pieces and the legs. Now the next step will be to glue our 2 bottoms and the middle piece together for the armrest as well as the legs. So I've been thinking of a way I'm going to clamp and glue these up. This is my solution, just a ratchet strap baser block. That is how I'm going to glue up these miters. That's kind of like just a temporary hold until we can cut these with the spline jig and add in the splines, which will be the actual structural integrity of the joint, just because it's basically somewhat like the way a mortise and tenon would function in the gluing surface, that you're not gluing end grain, you're gluing the edge grain of the board with the edge grain of this board with the spline that's going into the corner. So yeah, this method works. It's square. Yep, everything looks square. Get these glued up, and then step number after that will be to put the splines in. So let's get to gluing. Alright, what you just saw was a montage of me gluing up the arm and legs pieces, and that took place about 5 to 6 months ago. So I'm just now getting back to this project. Kind of put it aside just because I've been working on other paying projects. This is something that I designed and I'm making to make. So yeah, the next part of the plan is to put splines in these miter joints to strengthen them up. So I've just made a spline cutting jig and we're about to cut all the splines, so let's go into the shop and do that. So these splines are going to be 1/4 inch thick. So we got to scoot the fence over and do another pass on everything to get that 1/4 inch. And then we'll start making the stock for the splines. I'm going to be using white oak. I think ash with white oak detailing is a really cool look. I made a couple small little jewelry box type things with ash and white oak, and I think the two complement each other very well. So we're going to continue on cutting these splines into the pieces. So we have all of the slots cut for the splines to go into. Now we just have to mill down some white oak, 1/4 inch thick by however much wide, and we'll glue all of them in there. Okay, now it's just as simple as gluing these into all the pieces, all the slots, wait for it to dry. We'll cut everything and sand everything flush and smooth. So after gluing the first set of splines in, I kind of decided to dry fit them first. Some of them are a little tight, so I'm just sanding them here on a piece of 80 grit sandpaper just to get a snug fit. If it's too tight, I was having problems getting it tight to both spots of the spline by hitting it in there. So kind of perfect fit is somewhat needed. You don't want it too loose, but you don't want it so tight to where you have to kind of beat it in there. You just want it tight enough to where you can push it in there and it will hold itself in. Okay, so we got the splines glued in the arms and the legs. We're going to let the glue dry, then we're going to cut everything flush and sand. You know, I have a tool that'll be perfect for this job. Instead of hand cutting them, I'll be right back. This should speed things up a little bit. So, got everything sanded flush with the disc sander there, but there's a few spots, like here, you can see. So as you can see there, the spline is a little bit open. There's a little bit of a gap there. So to fix that, I'm just going to take this fine powder from sanding of the white oak, mix it with glue, fill the spots and sand it. And nobody will be the wiser except you and I. But I don't think you'll be able to tell, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so what you just saw was a quick sequence of the first top I made for this bench. Now, I originally had designed this to just be all ash, the whole top just to be ash. And it was going to be 3 boards as you kind of saw in the glue up. And that was it. That was what it was going to be. But as you'll see here in a second, coming back 5 months after having made that glue up, the whole panel just twisted heavily. And it was unrecoverable in my opinion, in my estimation. So I decided to make a new one. But let me tell you, I am super glad that I decided to do that, because the new design of the top, where it's just the ash with the 2 oak ribs on the outside, it just looks absolutely just killer in my opinion. And the way the armrests just come onto that rib, it just looks so good. So I'm glad that mistake happened. I'm glad I was forced to make a new top, because it made me make an adjustment that ended up making the project twice, 3 times as good as it was going to look. So back to the shop. So I've ran into a sad discovery that I thought for months was going to happen. This is the actual bench seat that I glued up, like I said, many months ago. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what I did, but nonetheless, the board is quite warped. So, there's a few options. One would be to try and correct it, but that would bring this whole thing down to probably 1.25 to 1 inch, and I really don't want that look. I want this to be kind of a thicker bench. Plus, that's going to take a lot of time and effort. 2 would be to just remake the piece, and I can just use this for another project. It is a frustrating discovery, but I think the best bet is just to go ahead and make new glue up. Alright, so we got the first round of sanding done. All the glue is scraped and sanded off. The joints here sanded flush and flat. Now we're going to take the track saw, cut everything to length. Alright, so everything's cut to length. Now just time to start cutting the mortises. And we're almost finished with this. I get it? Alright, so the mortises for the armrests are done. I'm liking how everything's lining up after it's clamped and glued. It's going to look really good. Now we're going to flip this over and work on the legs. And by that time we should be ready to glue everything together, and we'll be wrapping up this project quite soon. Now I'm wearing gloves for two reasons. One, obviously to keep the glue off my hands, but two, because my hands tend to sweat a lot, and because of this the oils and stuff all in my hands will get into this wood, and I'm working with a really open grain wood, ash and oak, so it tends to stain the wood, and then I have to re-sand that area in the piece. So I try to just mitigate that as much as I can by wearing gloves after I've done the final sanding on any piece I'm working with until I get the finish on. So that is why. Let's get to the glue up. I'm just going to be using Type Bond 2 and this brush to brush everything in the holes, and yeah, we'll be good to go. So I'm going to do each side at a time, clamping the armrest with the leg all on one clamp on each side. I think it'll be efficient that way. So you can see here I got a little bit of glue squeeze out. If you just take a plastic straw, and it helps to cut a little bit of an angle on it and push it into the glue out, it picks up almost all of it. And we just have a little spot left. We'll wipe it with a damp cloth, come back with a dry cloth. It is cleaned up. Alright, now is the time to apply the finish to this project. I'm super excited about it. I'm using this Rubio Monocoat, the pure version of it. It's basically just a clear oil to use as the finish for this project. I picked it out because I really didn't want to spray something like this with a polyurethane or polyacrylic, which I do a lot of times on my projects. I want to try something new, and this stuff looks pretty good with just one coat. I've seen people do 2 coats. I'm going to try it with just one, and it dries in a day and is fully cured in 7 days. So it seems like, from what I've seen online, a great finish. So this is kind of my trial run with this. I've got some instructions written down. I wrote down some instructions from various YouTube videos, but the Wood Whisperer on YouTube, he has a really good tutorial of it, so that's kind of how I'm basing my application process, but it seems pretty straightforward. So yeah, so the basic process of this, I'll just explain quickly here. So after you go through your sanding, and on this I went up to I think 150, you want to then raise the grain with water to open up all the pores. But then after doing that, the surface is going to be slightly rough, so you kind of just want to go over it. I'm going to go over it with a sanding sponge, just to knock those that roughness off of it, but not too much sanding to where it just fills up the pores again. And then you want to clean the surface with mineral spirits after wiping off the dust, vacuuming off the dust, and then it's as simple as mixing this up and wiping it on and wiping it off. So I'm excited to try this new finish. I usually use a polyacrylic on a lot of my projects that I'll use through a spray gun, but then I gotta take this outside because I don't have a paint booth. I gotta set up the spray gun, I gotta clean the spray gun after, I gotta do multiple coats. So this, I don't know, we'll see how it goes, see if I like it. It is a little more expensive, but like a bunch of people have said, if you factor in the time that it takes to spray or even brush on, which takes even longer, but spraying in general, like this would take probably 2 hours to spray between getting the gun out, setting it up, spraying it, waiting for it to dry, sanding, spraying again, cleaning the gun. Is probably a 2-hour process. This I'm expecting to take half the time, if not less, with a more natural looking result. And also, yeah, I didn't want to use those finishes because it's basically just a plastic that goes over the wood, which looks good in some instances, but here I really wanted to go with this look. So let's carry on with the process. Alright, the finish is on. Now we just wait 24 hours to move it around and to handle it, but it looks good to me. This finish definitely is very matte. This isn't something that you're going to get a shine out of, a gloss. Even a satin, you're not going to get that out of this. I've seen people do 2 coats of this, where they'll scuff it up with a green pad and then apply a second coat. And they also have a maintenance oil that I've seen people apply 24 hours after they do this, and it gives it a little more of a sheen to it. But this isn't a product that you're going to get a gloss finish from. And honestly, I think this looks great right now. It is flat, that is for sure. I mean, you look down and you're not going to get any reflections or anything, but that's not the point of this type of finish. A lot of the projects I use satin or lower. I've never used gloss or even semi-gloss really, for that matter. So this is what I'm kind of used to. It's a little more flat than I'm used to, but honestly I think it looks good. And once it's dry and we can move it around and stuff, I'm going to be really pleased with it. So yeah, it went on smoothly. It looks pretty darn good, and there's not much more I had to say about it, honestly. I'm gonna let it dry, then tomorrow we're gonna get some nice video, some nice pictures, throw it up on Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff, and we'll wrap this project up. And so this has definitely been one of my favorite builds I've done so far. I love the finish on this. Definitely going to use that way more on all of the projects that I can use it on. I just think it looks really great. This is a nice piece to my office until somebody may want to purchase it. And if you've made it to the end of this video, leave a comment. Tell me what you think about this project. Subscribe if you're not already. Drop a like, and yeah, we'll see you in another video. Thanks for watching.